throughout the major cities of Egypt that started on Tuesday. That was a groundswell of interest in things that we take for granted in this country, like legitimate democracy, like free speech, like true opposition, like accurate representation, like the right to a fair trial, like the right to have a government that rules you, that cares about you, that understands your interests, like the rights for economic improvement. And no? Okay. We can't do it. No? Okay. I don't think you need permission. These are basic rights, basic human rights that any country and any people in the world aspire to have. In Obama's speech over the last couple of days, he talked about basic human rights, that these rights are deprived from the people of Egypt and have been for the last 30 years. This group that you see around you represents Egyptians, both Muslim and Christian, joined together, standing up together for the rights of their brothers and their sisters in Egypt. This group represents other people from the free world, from the Arab world, from the US, from friends and parts of other cultures around the world. They come and they stand here with us today in solidarity with what's going on in Egypt. The situation in Egypt has been dire for the last 30 years, where people have lived under a military rule. People have lived under an oppressive regime. Basic rights have been stopped due to the rule of emergency law, where people can get arrested in the street for no reason. People can get put in prison with no trial. People can disappear off the streets without their families knowing where they've been. If you look at people's economic situation, 30% of the population lives in general poverty. 35% of the population still suffers from illiteracy. When this movement started on Tuesday, it started off with a group of students, young people, younger generations in their 30s and their 40s that had internet access, that used Twitter and Facebook to come and congregate at one of the central squares of Cairo, called the Square of Liberty. And if you look at their comments and their feedback ever since they attended, they didn't know that all these other people would show up as well. When they actually showed up, they found thousands of others, and they couldn't believe it themselves. They've had a peaceful demand for the government to leave power. They haven't gone out on riots or destroyed the city. The riot police started to intervene and to throw smoke grenades and to shoot at them with rubber bullets. Last I checked, there was 100 people killed. And that's before I left my house about 45 minutes ago. Hundreds have been put in prison and over 1,000 are hurt because of the brutality of the government and the brutality of the police. People are asking for basic rights that we have in the Bill of Rights. The right to have free and fair elections. The right to have a government that represents them. The right for the economic strength of the country to be equally distributed amongst its population, not a select few cronies that surround the Mubarak regime. Mubarak still refuses to leave power. He gave a very lame speech yesterday where he still insists on staying in power, appointed a vice president, and basically the army's on the streets. The army so far is doing a good job of protecting people. I haven't shot at anyone yet. The army in general in Egypt is quite respected, and we're hoping that this continues. Our asks as Egyptians and democracy-loving people living in Seattle, with everyone else that's participating, is that we understand what's happening in Egypt. We're able to represent that accurately to the news media. We are asking our government, our elected officials that we've helped in electing, we're tax-paying citizens of this country just like everyone else is. that they speak more forcefully against Mubarak and against his regime. Let's not play this two-sided equation where we're sort of with Mubarak or we're sort of with the people. We're sort of for stability and keeping it together, but we're sort of with the people going out in the streets. We got to take a stand. And this is the time for us to take a stand. Yeah. I didn't prepare anything. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to have... This, honestly, I have to thank, there's way too many people to thank for this, but let me just start off by thanking the people that made this thing come together. We have a lot of brothers and sisters that have just come together and rallied around this thing literally in the last 24 hours to put it together. And there's been a ton of work that's gone in setting up these signs, in getting the location, and contacting the media, and speaking to representatives, and just rallying all our friends and neighbors and co-workers to come and attend and support us. We also want to thank all our brothers and sisters from Tunisia in particular. That have started an awesome movement throughout the Arab world by standing up to their dictator and getting him out of power over the last 2 months. One of the other things to remember and to keep in mind is none of this change happens without sacrifice. I think the people of Tunis have taught us a lesson, and now in Egypt, the people of Egypt are also teaching us a lesson, which is none of this comes easy. Unless people are consistent in their asks, patient with what they're asking for, standing up for their rights, and speaking out against them, which is exactly what we're doing here, nothing changes. Everything stays the same. The brother is sharing with me a voice from a very famous Tunisian poet, which basically means if a nation wants to stay alive, if a people of a nation really want to live, then destiny must obey their needs. And this is what we're seeing, the destiny of the people of Tunis, and inshallah the destiny of the people of Egypt, God willing, will also come together. All people around the world. All right. Right now on the ground in Egypt, there's a curfew. If people have been following the news, between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. every day. The army seems to be getting more serious about imposing the curfew. My parents live in a suburb of Cairo. Yesterday, all day, I wasn't able to contact them to see how they were doing because, as you may know, the government's cut off all communications, telephone lines, mobile networks, the internet is still cut off. Today, some of that is coming back, but it's still quite hard to just make sure for those of us from Egypt to make sure that their family is okay, their loved ones are okay. So as I said, there's sort of a duality in how people feel. There's a sense of exhilaration, of happiness, of optimism, of want for change. At the same token, there's a sense of anxiety about our families and our friends and how they may be holding up. We hope for all Egyptians, all Tunisians, all people around the world to get what they deserve in terms of the basic rights and liberties that we enjoy in this country and many of us take for granted. Again, thanks so much for attending. Appreciate your attendance and your support.